Today, we're launching a full-on forensic investigation into what has to be one of the most baffling, stubbornly unresolved mysteries in human history, the supposedly impossible construction of the Egyptian pyramids. We already know the basics, so we're going to bypass the typical textbook stuff and look closely at the hard physical evidence, the ancient legends, and the actual science. We're exploring a highly compelling perspective today, the idea that humanity simply did not, and literally could not, build the pyramids unassisted. So whether you're a longtime follower of alternative history or just someone who loves a good structural paradox, strap in. We're about to explore some undeniable anomalies. So every good forensic investigation has to start by examining the official story, right? The alibi. The traditional historical narrative insists that the pyramids were built using primitive manual labor, vast earthen ramps, and basic copper tools. It's the story we've all been handed since elementary school. But here's the thing. When we actually cross-examine this alibi against the unforgiving laws of physics, engineering, and logistics, the official story simply doesn't check out. Actually, scratch that. It completely falls apart. Okay, let's dive into this. Just wrap your head around this number, 1,400. To hit the accepted 20-year construction timeline for the Great Pyramid, which historians tie to the reign of Pharaoh Khufu, builders would have had to cut, transport, and perfectly set an average of 1,400 massive stone blocks every single day. Let that sink in. That means setting a multi-ton block every few minutes, day and night, absolutely no breaks, for 2 straight decades. And when you look at the physical logistics required for this, the impossibility becomes glaringly obvious. To move that sheer volume of blocks using just dirt ramps and raw muscle, you'd need massive teams working simultaneously. The traditional theory actually requires around 52,500 men hauling stones all at once. But physical reality? It paints a totally different picture. There simply isn't enough space. You'd literally be cramming an army the size of a sold-out sports arena into a relatively tiny worksite with tens of thousands of guys slipping in the mud, trying to drag multi-ton stones up earthen ramps that would have needed to be a mile long just to reach the summit. It's logistical madness. And it gets worse. What were they supposedly using to carve these millions of massive stones? Thinking about the historical timeline reveals a massive, glaring technological paradox. During the Old Kingdom, when the Great Pyramids were built, they only had access to soft copper tools. Harder metals, like bronze, they weren't even introduced in Egypt until about 800 years after the Great Pyramid was finished. Iron came even later. Trying to perfectly shape 2.5 million blocks of hard stone with soft copper chisels is honestly like trying to carve a marble statue with a plastic spoon. And this brilliantly illustrates the crux of the problem. This quote right here from the noted Egyptologist Sir Flinders Petrie highlights the sheer, mind-bending perfection of the Great Pyramid's casing stones. These blocks, some weighing 10 tons, were fitted together with a tolerance of 0.002 inches. You literally cannot slide a razor blade between them. It is highly improbable, if not entirely physically impossible, to achieve this level of microscopic precision on a massive scale, using primitive, soft copper tools. So, we are forced to ask a vital question. Could a civilization that didn't even have the wheel for transport really maneuver blocks weighing up to 500 tons and carve them with unparalleled precision using soft copper? No way. If the traditional alibi of sheer muscle and primitive tools is physically impossible, we have to look for other suspects. Who or what else could have done it? Well, one of the most fascinating alternative theories detailed in our sources is acoustic levitation. Now, modern science defines this as using 2 opposing sound frequencies with interfering sound waves to create a resonance zone. That resonance actually allows an object to levitate. It sounds like sci-fi, but while modern laboratories can only levitate tiny objects, like little water droplets, using this method, proponents suggest that an ancient, highly advanced understanding of acoustics was the actual secret to lifting these impossible weights. Now, what's really interesting about this is how modern physics perfectly aligns with ancient folklore. There's this 9th century Arab legend, recorded by the historian al-Masudi, and it states that the pyramid builders possessed a mysterious papyrus. The story goes that they would place it under a stone, strike the stone with a metal rod, and bam, the massive block would effortlessly float about 150 feet through the air.
They just repeat this process, guiding the stones right up into the sky. Now, while the papyrus and the rod might be legendary, magical interpretations, they perfectly describe a technological process of frequency and resonance.
So if an advanced technology like acoustic levitation was used, who wielded it? Our sources present a few alternative suspects for us to consider. Some researchers argue for a highly advanced, lost human civilization, often dubbed the levitators, who predated the ancient Egyptians and completely mastered this technology before being wiped out by some global cataclysm. Others, like the author Zechariah Sitchin, point to extraterrestrial assistance, specifically the Anunnaki gods, suggesting that the pyramids and other massive stone platforms originally served as ancient landing sites. And hey, the fingerprints of this lost technology, they aren't just confined to Egypt. If we look globally, we see the exact same impossible construction methods all over the place. The 1,000-ton foundational stones of Baalbek in Lebanon, the massive lintels of Stonehenge in the UK, the colossal statues of Easter Island, they all share the exact same hallmark: unexplainable, massive lifting power that totally defies the primitive tools of their respective eras. But look, while stories of floating stones are incredibly captivating, as investigators, we need hard, physical proof, right? So we're going to pivot from the legends of acoustic levitation down into the microscopic realm. A growing body of researchers now argue that the real secret of the pyramids wasn't how the stones were lifted, but how they were made. Let's look at the actual chemical evidence trapped physically inside the pyramid blocks themselves. When geochemists took these pyramid stones and subjected them to rigorous X-ray chemical analysis, what they found was absolutely shocking. Inside these blocks, they discovered trapped clusters of air bubbles, a siliceous material called opal CT, and brushite, which is a mineral derived from organic matter like bone or bird droppings. And most incredibly of all, they found a small bundle of microscopic organic fibers, basically human hair, trapped deep inside the stone. So the crucial point is comparing those findings with natural rock. Natural limestone, which formed 50 million years ago at the bottom of an ocean, has a super dense matrix and perfectly horizontal strata. It absolutely positively does not contain human arm hair or trapped air bubbles. The blocks of the Great Pyramid, however, feature a loose matrix, wavy lift lines, and embedded organic material. This physical reality introduces a total paradigm-shifting theory. The blocks were not carved and dragged, they were poured. Let's move on and see how this builds into a comprehensive solution. This is the ancient geopolymers theory. Instead of breaking their backs moving 2.5-ton blocks, workers simply carried baskets of crushed limestone rubble up the structure. They mixed it with water, lime, and a natural binding agent called natron to create a slurry. Then they just poured this mixture into wooden molds directly on the pyramid tier, in situ, and let it harden into a geopolymer concrete. This elegantly solves the impossible logistics of the mile-long ramps, the insane 1,400 block-a-day timeline, and that razor-thin precision of the joints, all in one fell swoop. And you know, this also perfectly explains a glaring architectural mystery that's always bothered people. Researcher M.K. Jessup once noted, "From that prodigious perfection, the construction appears to have degenerated." If you look at later Egyptian dynasties, they built with much smaller, far cruder stones, and their pyramids frequently just collapsed into piles of rubble. Why? Because over the centuries, they had simply lost the high-tech chemical or acoustic knowledge of their ancestors. They reverted back to the primitive hand labor and carving that historians mistakenly attribute to the Great Pyramid. So, to summarize our investigation today, the hard physical evidence strongly dictates that humanity did not build the Great Pyramids using muscle, mud ramps, and copper chisels. The alibi is completely false. Whether the true method involved the mind-bending physics of acoustic levitation or the brilliant lost chemistry of ancient geopolymer concrete, the evidence carved into the very landscape of Giza suggests that early humanity possessed, or was gifted, an incredible high-tech science that has since been totally forgotten. The Great Pyramid remains a massive testament to a forgotten epic of advanced knowledge. It challenges us to completely rethink the linear narrative of human progress we've all been taught. And it leaves us with one incredibly provocative thought to ponder. If raw muscle didn't build the pyramids, what other ancient secrets are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for us to ask the right questions?